car for the corpse. 10 killion points. Is this fun or what? Oh, hello, kiddies. Don't mind me if I'm carrying on, but I've really grown to love this game. I could goo all night. Which brings to mind tonight's terror tale. It's about a couple of game players who are about to find out what happens when you don't slay by the rules. I call it oils well that ends well.
Baby, you always wear your seatbelt, right? Even when I'm not around?
Even when you're not around.
You sure? You never forget? It's just that I worry about you. And you exercise, right, baby? You do some sort of aerobics 3 times a week?
I do enough.
But baby...
Gina, darling, you're driving me nuts. I mean, hell, we porked once. You're acting like we're engaged or something.
I don't want to lose you. What if you have a heart attack or something?
Oh, I am not gonna have a heart attack, all right? I'm not. Unless, of course, you drive me to it.
Okay. But have you been planning for your retirement? Do you have an IRA?
What the hell's going on up there? Get me the hell out of here!
Taking a hit of that voodoo juice and pretending to be dead is one thing. But if I had to listen to that goo-goo talk for one more second, I was gonna kick it for real. 20 G's, there you go, buddy boy. Just like clockwork. You, put a sock in that love talk. Where are her friggin' clothes? I'm buried 6 feet under and you're introducing the bearded clam to the one-eyed worm?
Shut up, Larry. It just sort of happened.
Okay, I see. You can go on pretending that this moron wants your tired ass. And he wants to go on pretending he can just hump Grandma Moses. I don't care. But when I'm in that box, you better be concentrated 100% on digging me up ASAP. Or I'll come back from the dead. And I'll rip your head off and I'll shit down your fucking throat. You got that, you flea-bitten hose bag? Do I make myself clear?
Call me old-fashioned, but I just don't think that's any way to talk to a lady who gives great head.
Oh, baby, you're the greatest.
Well, what do you say we drive into Vegas and do a little celebrating?
Baby. I got this money earmarked for a kick-ass mutual fund.
What? Come on, you're shitting me, right?
I got all my money in it. $82,000, earning 19% on every penny. Don't let anybody bullshit you, baby. You gotta make your money work for you.
And I thought you were just another pretty little thing with big tits and blue eyes.
I told you when you met me I was worth killing for.
You know, I think this is the start of a beautiful friendship. But, are you sure you ain't interested in just an itsy bit of blackjack?
Vegas is for chumps. I say we get right back to work.
Well, all right. Back to work it is. And I know a place a few counties over that should be ready for business.
Sure is your night.
Oh, thank you kindly, Joe. You're an angel.
That's right. When you must spread them wings, honey butt.
Hey, didn't your daddy ever teach you how to respect a lady?
Now, being his father, I might take offense to that, darling. I taught my boy good, and I don't want people thinking otherwise. So you just give him the benefit of the doubt. And when you show us a lady, We'll show her some respect. He just wanted to get a little tame.
Welcome, friend.
Same to you, Skinny. Another round for the house and a bottle of Jim Beam in the bar for me. I'm buying, so keep 'em coming.
Got it.
Hey now, pretty lady.
Shove it in your pants, honey. There ain't no chance.
Lesbian.
Come here. I'm no lesbian, honey. I don't munch carpet and I don't strap it on. But I do hate men. And right now I hate them in a big way. Where are you going?
I'm going to the bathroom.
Doesn't look full to me, honey. Sit down.
What kind of crap is this? If the guy wants to go to the bathroom, let him go, bitch.
There we go. That's the word I hate. Bitch. I show a little authority, I stress my will a little bit, and I'm a bitch. Men, you're all the same. You're just like the guys I work for. They want me to keep my mouth shut and do a good job. And as long as I do it like a good little girl, they can screw me all over and tell me to like it. And then when the day's done, they can stop screwing me so they can fuck me.
Ooh.
Well, I say screw that. Screw them, screw the company.
Excuse me, please, ma'am, but just exactly what kind of business are you in?
Oil, Bubba. The discovery and distribution of black crude.
Damn it. I knew I'd find you here. You need to get on the phone with Lesher and Malcolm, pronto. I'm telling you, it's deep, but it looks to me like we found...
What? Found what, Jerry? Oil?
I need to speak to you in private, Miss Snow.
He's found oil, boys.
Oil?
He has found oil.
Oh.
Very observant. Smarter than you look. On whose property? Maybe one of these bright young men has hit the jackpot? Who's the winner? Who's the lucky winner?
Nobody.
That's a lie.
Look, I don't think the company would appreciate this breach of confidentiality, Miss Stone.
Fuck him, Jerry. I don't care anymore.
I think you've had enough. We're leaving.
I think the lady wants to stay.
What's it gonna take, Jerry? What would it take for you to sell out those bastards that bathe us to oil?
Look, I just can't do this. I'm sorry. It's just not that easy.
Why not? I got $5 grand. I'll go back to the motel and get it. $5 grand for you to hold back that report until we could work something out with the landowners.
$5,000 to lose my job. I don't think so.
I got $5,000. I want to be a partner.
Me too. That makes 15.
I can get 5,000.
I got 5 more.
That's $25,000, Jerry, to hold up that report. What do you say?
Okay. For $25,000, I'll hold back my report for 1 week. But I want that money in my hands tonight. Well, thank you, darling. Glad to hear it. Because you got a bigger problem. Your oil,
Yeah? What about it?
it's under the graveyard.
Jesus, this place gives me the creeps.
Ooh, baby, you look so good. I can't get my hands off you.
Just a little bit longer. They're about ready to bite.
You didn't think that waitress back there was prettier than me, did you?
What waitress? I only got eyes for you, darling.
Oh, I hope so. Did you rig the phony oil?
Sure did.
It's bubbling.
That's the Sea Patrol, all right.
What? Well, it's your damn subsurface gas propelling the crude oil up through the fissure of least resistance in the cutaneal dermal crust.
He means it's sort of like farting in the bathtub.
Oh, I got it.
All right.
Yeah. So, what are we gonna do now? The cemetery is owned by the city.
Oh, well, I think we ought to set up a corporation and sell stock to those in town who might be interested.
Are you high? Fuck that. Right, Daddy?
He's right, Spider. We got to protect our investment.
Oh, yeah.
I can't believe I'm standing here with the regal heads of the military industry and they can't come up with some sort of simple solution.
We'll think of something.
Well, you do that. But in the meantime, boys, I want my money.
You'll get your money. Just show up at the Legion at closing time.
Let's hope so. Or else this whole damn thing's gonna blow up in your face.
It ain't very pretty, is it? But that damn stuff there'll drive a man crazier than hell.
We close in 15 minutes, but I can stay around later if you like.
It's taking them so long.
Relax, baby, they'll be here.
Here it is, 20 grand.
I'll take that.
What's going on?
Change of plan.
What is this bullshit? I'm calling Beavis Oil right now.
Sit down. The money's still yours. If your lady friend does us a little favor.
Oh, screw that.
Shut up, Jerry. Sit down. What's the favor?
You were right about the cemetery.
Yeah, we can't move on that property without creating suspicion.
We got to buy all the surrounding farmland.
And we foreclosed on it 2 months ago.
That's the good news. And the bad.
We got to buy all of it just to have safe oil rights. Or you gonna have to buy it.
I don't have that kind of money.
No, but we do. You just have to come up with your fifth.
And we'll supply the rest.
And become my silent partners?
You got it.
Very clever. How much do I need?
Oh, come on, you're not actually considering this.
How much? Give me round numbers.
360,000, 72K each.
I'm in.
Good.
I still think we should blow town tonight with the 20th out. Forget the 280 plus, and you never, never should put your own stash on the line, huh?
Too late for that, baby. I already wired for the money. Shrug, the guy in the suit. Well, he's got everybody's cash in the safe deposit box at the bank.
You're getting greedy, you know that? Just look at yourself.
Listen, baby, I understand if you're experiencing some kind of professional jealousy here.
Oh, you go to hell, bitch.
Ooh, that's clever. The B word.
Listen here, I've forgotten more about this shit than you're ever gonna know.
Oh, really? Well, as long as you're throwing around cliches, how about this one? It takes money to make money. Or this one. You're out of your league. Boy, what a disappointment you turned out to be.
I don't have to sit here and take this guff from you.
Wait a minute, baby. Wait a minute, I'm sorry. Baby, I'm sorry. Please.
Go to hell.
Promise me you'll be there tomorrow?
Where is he?
He's in here.
Bastard! I ought to kill you!
Easy.
You think you're real cute, don't you? Bastard! Where's the money? Where the fuck you stash the money?
Shut up.
Oh, boy, Jerry broke into William's house and took him to the bank by gunpoint. He cleaned us out. Then Cardi saw you and him fighting last night. What was this? Was this some kind of a lover's quarrel?
Spying.
Well, let's just say I was driving by.
Okay, so we had a few words. So what?
Well, Williams finally got untied and he called old Spider. Cardi, boy, he was in luck. They knew right where to find him. That old cutlass of his was sitting right in the yard of Joe Osborne's house. They found it down there this morning about 5:30.
Joe Osborne. Who's he?
Tell you the truth, ma'am, it ain't no he. It's she.
Joe Osborne's that white trash slut that works the bar over at the Legion.
It makes a lot of sense. All right. Let's get to work.
Hey, what are you gonna do with that?
In case you gentlemen are wondering, this is a highly corrosive acid that veterans in the oil business like myself find to be quite helpful in testing ore samples. You were saying, Mr. Petermeyer?
Well, there's not that much left to tell. Old Spider and Cardi, they surprised him. They subdued him. They tied him up. They looked everywhere for that money. He hid that money. He hid the money.
Mr. Petermeyer, you're not leaving anything out, are you?
Oh, no, ma'am.
Is he leaving anything out, Jerry?
No.
Where's the money? Is this your only chance, Jerry?
Now, look, is this really
Stay out of this, Shrub. The details, Petermeyer. I want you to tell them to me. Where did they find the two of them? In what room?
In the bedroom.
Last chance, Jerry.
You can kiss my ass.
Where in the bedroom, Conrad?
In the bed. They were together in the bed.
And it was fan-fucking-tastic.
You asshole. You're just like the rest of them. Well, grab a box. Let's bury him. We got a lot of looking to do before it gets dark. It worked like a dream. Oh, baby, you should have seen their faces when I stuck you with that voodoo juice. They bought the whole thing. The bunker robbery, the Joe's girlfriend, the acid, everything.
Get out of here!
I'm trying, baby. I'm doing the best I can.
Well, maybe your best just isn't good enough, little lady. See, this here's the big leagues.
Carl!
Yeah, baby.
I don't understand. If you're up there, then...
What's happening, babe?
Well, what can I say, Gina? The oil surveyor is a three-man con.
Damn it, Carl! Where's the money? Why didn't you tell me he was in on this?
Because, like he said, the oil surveyor's a three-man con. Nice to see you again, Gina. Blanks, just like before. You shouldn't have kept mouthing off about that financial wizardry of yours. Wasn't smart. It's kind of like waving a piece of raw meat in front of a hungry dog. Right, boys?
That's my money, Larry.
Not anymore. Belongs to us now. I'd like you to meet the rest of the charter members of the He-Man, Big Mouth, Fat, Wrinkly-Ass Feminist Haters Club. Each taking great pride in swindling you out of your life savings. Boys, Gina. Gina, the boys.
Hi, Gina. Sorry, baby, game over. For what it's worth, that night in the graveyard, you were all right. For an old broad.
Get out of that hole, Cardi.
Oh, damn it, Cardi.
What's the matter with you?
Oh, shit.
What is that stuff? The hell is that?
It's oil.
It sure as hell is.
Holy shit! There really is oil under this graveyard.
Jeez, the ground is dripping.
Well, I'll be damned.
That you can count on. Remember one thing, gentlemen. Hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. And today's been a real bitch.
Oh, shit!
Looks like business is really booming for Carl and Gina. Talk about flame and fortune. You know, kiddies, there's something about this little tale that interests me.
Well, I'll be damned.
I think it's this actor. Yes. The others are good, but this one, we're talking a real bleeding man type. He's a regular Gory Cooper, a Robert Redford. And that voice, I could swear it reminds me of someone I know. Ooh, I just love how your hair is grown out. A little scream rinse and conditioner, and it'll look faboo. If you don't look dead, we don't look dead. Oh, hello, kiddies. You're right on time for your appointment. You know, it was always one of my ghouls and death to open my own scare salon. Now, let's see. A few shrieks in your hair would look good. A bouffant would look even better. Or maybe you'd like to try tonight's dye fashion statement. It's a nasty nugget that asks the question, zombie or not zombie? I call it halfway horrible.
Recognize it?
It's Dan King.
He worked in your company.
He founded it with me. That's Extheon B. Preservative my company's about to introduce. What happened here?
Well, Mr. King took 40 cc's of your preservative Extheon B right into his neck. They told me that his head won't rot for 100 years. What's in this shit?
Well, basically, it's a herb from the rainforest.
Found this in his pocket. I have not forgotten or forgiven. At first, we thought it was suicide, but his handwriting isn't matching. Mean anything to you?
No. Jesus.
Somebody put it on after he died.
You have any aspirin?
Sure.
Thanks.
Found this in Dan King's apartment.
That's Brazil. A million years ago. There's Dan, me, Kevin, and Alex. Alex died down there.
Do you have any enemies, Mr. Lassen?
I'm the president of an international chemical company.
Well, is there anybody you can think of with access to this chemical that might want you or Dan King dead?
Not for a long time.
This is crazy, Roger.
Came down here to learn, Daniel.
Not this.
Come on. These people have been doing this for hundreds of years.
We're going straight to hell.
Yeah, maybe, Kevin. But what a ride it's gonna be.
Think of the secrets. Huh? Things no one's ever seen before. Fuck, man. I didn't come here to see this. Taking us to a place we can't turn back from, Roger. This side of you, it's evil.
All the way. We came down here to go all the way.
Everybody has an evil side. Secret's just learning how to keep it on a leash.
Still got that headache? You know, I had a friend who worked in a chemical plant in Baton Rouge. He used to get headaches, too. His whole head rolled off like a bowling ball one day. Hell of a sight.
I don't work in the plant, I own it.
Sorry. I have not forgotten or forgiven. This is no good, Roger. No, sir.
Knows where I live.
He?
You know, he, she, it. Somebody knows where I fucking live.
You want a little piece of advice from your local police department? Why don't you leave town for a couple of days? And maybe we can find out who this he, she, or it is.
No, I can't leave town now. My company's debuting a new product in a week. We're in the final stages of FDA approval. I've waited years for this.
It's your life. Oh, I know I keep asking you this, but are you sure there's nobody? Nobody at all that you could remember that might want to see you dead?
Nah, nobody.
Okay.
Nobody alive.
Here we go. Oh my God, look at that. Look at that. Ooh. Be careful with it. Oh, look at that. Put it away. Come on. Hang on there. Look out for that.
Hey, take it up, guys. Gotta check out. Is that it?
Hey, whoa, no. Look out. Wait, what's happening?
Trouble with the local cops, you know. Not enough bribes or something, I don't know. They're gonna bust us on visa charges. You know, we talked about this. Knew it was gonna happen.
What about Alex?
Well, he's already in town. He's gonna take another plane out. We'll see him in L.A.
Another plane?
Yeah.
Why would he do that? Why would he do
Hey,
that, man?
Do you want to spend the rest of your life in a Brazilian jail? Is that it? Do what I tell you. Pack this shit up and get the hell out of here. We don't have a lot of time.
Hey, where you going?
Catch up to you.
Roger.
Alex. No free lunch, buddy. Tribe demanded a trade. They wanted a sacrifice in exchange for their secrets. You.
You can't do this.
All the way. You came down here to go all the way.
Wait, not like this. Roger, you can't do. I'm your best friend, Roger. 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 You can't do this. Roger. I'm your best friend.
Sorry.
Roger, you can't do this. No! Roger! No! No!
And see how the natives use the herb. Well, some of them, yeah, we got to, had to. Oh, thank you, Helen.
It's fascinating. And it's from these herbs that you discovered in the rainforests of Brazil that your company is developing into the preservative...
Extheon B, yes. And with the introduction of this product, mankind will finally have a preservative that will keep food fresh, literally, forever. And it is completely safe.
And what do you think the ramifications for us would be?
They're enormous. Try this on. Famine will be banished from the earth forever.
Now, that is remarkable, and I have to admit, I'm a little skeptical. But I understand you've prepared a demonstration.
Well, let's call it brunch, shall we? Now, these apples were harvested over 2 years ago and treated with Extheon B.
2 years?
Uh-huh. Go ahead.
Delicious.
Like just off the tree. It's a whole new world. wood that you use in the construction of your home will never rot. The clothing you wear will never fade. It's remarkable.
Already, I'm thinking of the money that I'll save on suits.
Well, if you've got a good fashion sense, you should be all right.
I think that about does it. Barbara, we can wrap up. Mr. Lassen, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Robert. Excuse me if I don't see you out.
Of course.
Mr. Lassen's office. Yes. One moment, please. Mr. Lassen's office.
Roger?
Colin.
Listen, you seem to be having a little bit of trouble with the old FDA, my grand fromage. They're putting a hold on approval of Extheon B.
What? Why?
I think it's Dan. His little exit from this mortal coil seems to have freaked him out a little bit. Big time, actually.
Jesus Christ, what do we pay those senators for? Don't they realize the pressure we're under? They want this breakthrough going to the Germans or Japanese? God damn it! Listen, I don't care if you gotta go down there, sit on their faces and sing Swanee River. I want this thing approved. You understand me? Approved. Fuck Dan.
A doctor, Roger. See a doctor.
Withers, get me more aspirin.
Yes, Mr. Lassen.
I'm fine. What the hell am I supposed to do? If I don't get FDA approval for Extheon B, I'm ruined.
Well, traditionally, I think when a ship is taking on water, mon capitan, the thing to do is to plug the leaks.
Yes, and exactly which leak did you have in mind?
Kevin.
Kevin? I haven't spoken to Kevin since Brazil.
I know. Maybe you should. Look, there's a psycho out there running around knocking off people you know with your chemical. Now, if you should suddenly decide to look up Kevin, your little leak could turn into the Titanic's iceberg. Roger, there's a half of you that is not a very nice guy. Now, don't get me wrong. That's one of the things I like about you. There's a whole world of bad karma out there with your name on it. And now, with a nervous FDA, suspicious investors, loose ends like old goofed-up Kevin out there in a gutter someplace, this might be just the time for all that bad karma to come crashing down on your sweaty head.
Why don't you just perch up on that mantle over there and chant nevermore? It'd save time. Why don't I fire you?
You're not gonna fire me, Roger.
Don't be so sure.
No. Now, you see, everybody needs at least one person to dish out a little truth now and again. I'm that guy, boss. Till death do us part.
Hey, Kev. It's me, Roger. Kevo, I need to talk to you about Brazil, man. I'm losing whole days here. Something's happening. Kev? Kevin's dead. He's dead.
are you talking about?
You sent me to him and he's dead.
Hey! 2 words, Roger. Sleeping pills.
You set me up.
Are you crazy?
You always judge me for what happened to Alex, but you weren't down there. You don't know how it was. I'm smarter. I'm smarter than all of you.
You've lost it! God, you finally lost it! You fuck!
Good move. The one person in the world that actually liked you.
Alex, you're dead.
Nobody dies in Macumba voodoo, Roger. You know that. They're just raised and raised over and over forever.
What do you want?
Come on, Roger. I've spent 6 years in a voodoo curse. I haven't even changed my clothes yet, and that's all you have to say? Huh?
Jesus Christ. This isn't happening. There's something wrong with my mind. I'll fix it and you'll be gone.
Yes, you're mine. Caught your killer yet, Raj?
Leave me alone.
In a minute.
I had to do it, Alex. All the way, remember? We went down there to go all the way.
Sure, Raj, sure.
Noticing anything unusual about these 2 pieces of paper, Roger? Oh, the handwriting's the same. You really want to find your killer, Roger? Really? Then take a good look in the mirror, because it's you.
You killed him, Roger.
What's happening to me?
Your great controlled dark side, the one you're so proud of, it's out of its cage now, Roger. It's not even telling your other half what it's doing anymore. It's going to eat you alive.
This is impossible.
The world changes, Roger. You and I, we were best friends once. Now I'm a zombie. And you, look at you. I spent 6 years down there without a soul, Roger. And believe me, old buddy, I've had time to get this curse right. I've beaten you, Roger.
No.
I've finally beaten you, Roger.
Yeah, forgot about one thing. Zombie or not, you're still pathetic, jealous little Alex!
Too late, Roger. We can't stop it. It's too late.
I've always been tougher than you, Alex. I'll beat this too. Fucking zombies. Come in.
Mr. Lassen?
Dr. Benaloy.
What can I do for you, Mr. Lassen?
I have a problem, Doctor.
Obviously.
That's it. That's the son of a bitch that started all this. What is it? What does it mean?
It's voodoo, Mr. Lassen.
Thanks, Doc. You gotta be a little bit more vague.
It's called a shoe. A harnessing of the two-faced God that controls the coexistence of good and evil. When this voodoo is released, it destroys that balance. There are the usual symptoms: perspiration, heart palpitations, homicidal blackouts, suicide.
Fix it.
Mr. Lassen, the treatment can be problematic.
No, man, you don't understand. You gotta fix it.
Or what?
You gotta help me. It's Alex that did this. God damn. I can't stop what's going on inside me. I'll pay, man. I will pay.
Yes, of course, you will. The only treatment for a shoe is called CRYPT. It kills the curse by destroying the evil half of the person attached.
Okay.
But in a case as clearly advanced as yours, there is one small snaggette.
What?
You'll probably kill you.
I don't care. Do it.
Miracles, Mr. Lassen, can be a messy, complicated affair.
Oh, God damn it, I'm rich! Look at this shit! I'm rich! I will make you rich! Do you understand? I'll give you everything. Everything from the profits of XDon B. Just help me.
Are you prepared, Mr. Lassen?
Ready.
Submit now, Mr. Lassen. Submit now.
Mr. Lassen's office.
Withers. I want you to do something for me.
Mr. Lassen, there's police here. They want to talk to you. About some bodies the janitor found in the office.
Get a container of XDon B. 100 now. 200 cc's.
But that's all of our experimental stock.
Please do what I tell you. Prepare it for syringe and bring it to me at my home.
Mr. Lassen?
Come in.
Where's the light?
Don't! Did you bring the syringe and the XDon B?
Yes. What is it that you want me to do, Mr. Lassen?
Bring it to me. I beat him with this. I beat that son of a bitch.
What?
Alex thought he had me, but he was wrong. See, there is a way to beat the curse. Destroy your evil half. The half that the curse feeds on. Beneloy did it. Before it could completely destroy me, he killed my evil half. Now it must be preserved.
Well, at least in the end, Roger knew rot from wrong. If only he'd learned a little fester. You'll be happy to know, kiddies, that our story has a happy ending. Roger's company did very well. Its shares shot up on the New York Stock Exchange. So, have we made up our minds? You want bangs? Perfect. I have just the thing. Bang.
The desert stretched endlessly, a blistering canvas of sand and stone that shimmered under the merciless sun. Dust devils spun lazily across the horizon, as if nature itself were performing some kind of morbid ballet. The old Texaco rig stood like a lonely sentinel, its skeletal frame rusted orange, creaking faintly with the rhythm of the desert wind. 4 miles, there was nothing but the earth's dry, cracked skin and the occasional withered tumbleweed. Yet, despite the barren isolation, there was a hum in the air, subtle and insidious, as though the ground itself whispered secrets to anyone patient enough to listen. Inside the shack by the rig, Jim Slick Malone wiped the sweat from his brow, his forearms gleaming with exertion. He was a man who had spent his life clawing at the earth for every drop of oil he could get, and the desert had taught him patience, endurance, and paranoia in equal measure. He glanced at the map pinned to the wall, noting the rough circles and jagged excess marking old dry wells, each a monument to failure. This was his last shot, the one that could finally turn his luck around or bury him in sand and regret. Slick's partner, a wiry man named Earl Spade Hargrove, was pacing the shack like a caged rattlesnake. His thin frame was almost skeletal beneath his dust-streaked overalls, but his eyes were sharp, glinting with a greed that never slept. "Jim," he said, voice low and hoarse, "we're running on fumes. You sure this is the spot? I mean, we've drilled half the state blindfolded and found nothing but disappointment." Slick didn't answer right away. He ran a hand through his greasy hair, his eyes narrowing on the horizon. "Spade," he said finally, "you ever hear of the Widow's Peak? There's an old story, passed down from the drillers before us. They say a man struck black gold there once, but he vanished, poof. Just gone. Nobody ever found him, but the story it's in the whispers of the sand." Spade snorted, a dry, bitter sound that carried no amusement. "You're talking about ghost stories. Ain't nobody buried in some oil gusher, Jim. We need barrels, not bedtime tales." The shack rattled suddenly as a gust of wind slammed the door. Both men jumped, their nerves already frayed by the relentless heat and weeks of empty drilling. Outside, the desert seemed to pulse, waves of heat dancing across the horizon, and for a brief moment, Slick swore he saw a shadow move across the sand. He blinked, and it was gone. Ignoring the chill creeping up his spine, Slick gestured toward the rig. "We drill at first light," he said. "If Widow's Peak's got what I think it's got, we hit it, we're done. If not," he let the threat hang in the air, unspoken, because both men knew all too well that the desert didn't forgive fools. Night fell in a swath of violet and red, dragging its cold fingers across the desert. Slick and Spade sat outside the shack, a lantern casting long, trembling shadows across their faces. They ate beans from a tin, the clink of metal the only sound aside from the wind. Every so often, Slick's gaze drifted to the rig, its outline jagged and menacing against the twilight. Something about it seemed alive in the fading light, as if it were watching them, waiting. "You ever think," Spade said, poking at his beans with a rusty fork, "maybe the old-timers weren't joking about that guy disappearing? Maybe there's something down there, beyond the oil?" Slick didn't answer. He had the same thought himself but was wise enough not to voice it. Some ideas, once spoken aloud, had a way of summoning things best left buried. Morning arrived like a thief, soft and grey, and the two men were already at the rig, sweat already soaking through their clothes. The first drill punch broke through the crusty earth with a sound like a gunshot, and the ground shivered under their boots. Day after day, they drove the drill deeper, the metal screeching as it bored into the unyielding rock. By the fourth day, the desert had become a furnace, the heat a living thing that clung to their skin, demanding sacrifice. Then, on the seventh day, it happened. The drill hit a pocket deep beneath the sands, and for a moment, there was nothing. Silence, thick and absolute, pressed against their ears. Then a shudder ran up the rig, a violent, rattling tremor that threw both men off balance. Oil burst from the earth like a black geyser, spraying the sky and turning the desert into a nightmarish scene of chaos. Slick laughed, a harsh, manic sound, and threw his arms into the air. "We've done it, Spade. We've done it." But his laughter was cut short. From the mist of oil, a shape emerged, tall and indistinct at first, like a shadow stretched into life. Slick froze. Spade's fork clattered to the ground. The shape coalesced, human yet not human, dripping with black fluid that seemed alive, writhing like serpents. The eyes were pits of darkness, and the mouth twisted into a grin that was all sharp teeth and promise of pain. A voice hissed, low and gurgling, as if coming from beneath the earth itself, "You dug too deep." Slick stumbled back, his hands reaching for something, anything, to defend himself, but the shadow moved with unnatural speed. Spade screamed, trying to flee, but the sand seemed to rise up like a wave, holding him in place as tendrils of oily darkness wrapped around his limbs. For hours, or maybe seconds, time had become meaningless, the men struggled. The desert had become a living trap, each grain of sand a knife against their skin. Slick felt the cold bite of despair as the entity loomed over him, whispering promises of endless wealth, eternal power, and a price he could never hope to pay. Finally, he fell to his knees, choking, gasping, and the entity leaned close. Its voice was a sibilant caress, a symphony of menace and allure. "The well it is mine, and so shall you be if you cannot resist." Slick felt himself being drawn into the blackness, the world spinning and twisting, and then, as suddenly as it began, the grip released. He stumbled, coughing, and the shadow retreated, dissolving into the air with a hiss that sounded like the desert itself laughing. Spade was gone. Only a slick of black oil marked where he had been, a reminder that greed had its cost. Slick sank to the sand, chest heaving, staring at the gushing well. The oil shimmered under the sun, pure, irresistible, and yet tainted by the memory of what had almost taken him. Days passed, though Slick did not leave the rig. The well continued to spurt its dark wealth, and he had made a decision. He would not let the desert take him, not yet. Not after everything. He worked tirelessly, siphoning oil, filling barrels, his body and mind pushed to the brink. Each night, he dreamed of Spade, of the shadow, of the cold promises whispered in the hum of the earth. By the end of the second week, Slick had amassed a small fortune in barrels. He could see the world beyond the desert, the life he had always dreamed of. But the whisper followed him, insidious, patient. Every movement, every glance at the well, carried the echo of that hissing promise. One night, as he lay under the canvas of stars, the wind carrying the distant sound of rattlesnakes, he understood. The well was alive. It had a will, an appetite, and it would not be denied. And if he stopped even for a moment, it would come for him again. Slick Malone was a man who had gambled with fate, who had stared into the abyss of human greed and lived. But the desert teaches harsh lessons. In the end, every man who digs too deep pays the price, and every well that seems too good to be true is a doorway to something darker, hungrier, and eternal. As the moon rose, painting the oil in silver, Slick whispered to himself, a promise he half believed, I will master you. I will control you. No shadows will take me. And the desert laughed. The next morning, Slick Malone awoke to the hum of the desert, a low vibration that seemed to come from beneath the sand itself. He sat on the edge of the cot in his shack, eyes heavy but alert, mind still clinging to the memory of Spade's disappearance. The wind had shifted overnight, carrying with it the faint scent of tar and iron, a warning embedded in the desert air that he could not ignore. Slick rose slowly, muscles stiff from hours of vigilance, and stepped outside. The oil well loomed like a black monument, its surface gleaming in the first light of dawn. Steam rose from the spout in curling wisps, reflecting shades of crimson and gold from the awakening sun. The sight was mesmerizing, hypnotic, almost obscene in its beauty. Slick swallowed hard, knowing that each barrel he collected was another thread binding him to the dark promise of the well. He went about his work with mechanical precision, loading barrels onto the battered pickup that had served him for years. His hands were black with oil, cracked and raw, but he didn't care. Greed had sharpened his senses to a razor's edge, and every movement was guided by the unspoken desire for more. The desert seemed to watch, the wind whispering faintly, almost conversationally, as if amused by his devotion. By midday, Slick had loaded over 20 barrels. Sweat poured down his back, but he ignored the fatigue. Something deep in his gut told him he was being tested. The shadow of the previous night's terror lingered in the edges of his vision, and every clink of metal against metal made his heart leap. He tried to dismiss it as nerves, a leftover phantom of fear, but he could not shake the feeling that the well itself was aware of his movements. He was almost finished when a sudden tremor shook the ground beneath his feet. A hiss followed, low and rolling, like the exhale of some great, subterranean beast. Slick froze. The barrels rattled in the bed of the truck. A thin black line of oil crept across the sand, moving faster than gravity should allow. Slick took a cautious step back. You again, he whispered, his voice dry and ragged. The air shimmered above the well, and then, slowly, impossibly, the shadow reappeared. Not fully formed, but enough, dark, dripping, its eyes hollow pits, its grin stretching impossibly wide. Slick clenched his fists, summoning every ounce of courage he had left. I'm not Spade, he said firmly. I won't be you. The shadow shifted, fluid and unearthly, flowing like smoke yet solid, its form growing as if fed by his fear. The well bubbled violently, spewing oil into the sky in black torrents. The ground quaked again, and Slick stumbled, barely catching himself on the rig's support beam. You think you can take from me, the shadow hissed, a voice that was everywhere and nowhere, echoing from the depths of the desert itself. You dig, you steal, you take, but the well always collects its due. Slick's stomach churned. He realized, with a sinking clarity, that the well was alive, not merely a source of oil but a sentient force, ancient and insatiable. It demanded payment, and Spade had been only the first. He turned to the barrels, their weight suddenly feeling heavier than lead. Each one was a testament to his greed, a bargaining chip he hoped would protect him. Yet, as he glanced at the black sheen glistening across the sand, he knew there would be no negotiation. The well's appetite was not for gold, it was for souls, for submission, for fear. Hours passed, or maybe minutes, for time had become distorted in the presence of the well. Slick worked feverishly, filling every container he could find, hauling barrels toward the pickup, trying to maintain some semblance of control. The shadow followed, always at the edges of his vision, stretching, coiling, whispering threats that crawled beneath his skin. Night fell again, faster than expected, dragging the desert into darkness. Slick lit a lantern and sat on the hood of the truck, staring at the well. He could feel the oil throbbing beneath the surface, alive and hungry, and the shadow danced along the edges of the rig, its movements unnatural, almost joyous in their fluidity. He thought of Spade, of the thin man trapped beneath the weight of his own ambition, and of the countless others who might have stumbled into this forsaken desert. The thought made his skin crawl, but also hardened his resolve. He would not succumb. Not yet. Sleep came in brief, tortured intervals, each dream a twisted reflection of the desert. In one, the ground opened beneath him, swallowing him whole while Spade's face emerged from the black oil, smiling in silence. In another, the well erupted into a monstrous form, a living creature of black liquid with teeth that gleamed like obsidian. Each time, Slick awoke drenched in sweat, heart hammering, but still alive. By the fifth day, Slick had amassed an astonishing quantity of oil. The pickup groaned under the weight, the barrels lining the desert like a trail of dark jewels. Yet the shadow had grown more assertive, manifesting fully now, hovering over the rig with a presence so overwhelming it seemed to press down on the world itself. Slick's mind raced. He realized that brute force or cunning would not save him. The well demanded respect, understanding, and perhaps something deeper, an acknowledgement that it was more than a resource. It was a force, a sentient entity that measured worth in fear, courage, and greed. He decided to take a risk. Leaving the lantern burning by the rig, Slick approached the well cautiously, hands raised in a gesture of both surrender and supplication. "I mean no disrespect," he said, voice trembling, "but I need this. I need to survive, to live." The shadow paused, the black tendrils swirling as if considering his words. A low rumble emanated from the well, vibrating through the sand, through the very air. Slick felt it in his chest, in his bones, in the pit of his stomach. "You understand nothing," the shadow hissed finally. "This is not for you. This is not for man. You dig, you take, you trespass, and yet, you plead. You tempt fate." Slick swallowed, feeling the weight of his hubris. "Then tell me," he whispered, "what do you want? How can I survive?" The shadow's grin widened impossibly, a display of teeth that seemed to reflect the very darkness of the well. "To survive is to obey. To obey is to give. To give is to join the endless, the hungry, the eternal." Fear gripped him, icy and suffocating, yet amid it came a spark of defiance. "I won't join you. I won't let you take me, not like Spade. I'll find a way to leave this place, with the oil, with my life intact." The shadow recoiled, almost in amusement, or perhaps surprise. The well trembled, the gushing oil turning into a whirlpool of black chaos. Slick could feel the desert's pulse accelerating, the sands vibrating, the air heavy with tension. Hours blurred into one another, the desert holding its breath, waiting. Slick worked tirelessly, loading barrels onto the pickup, strategizing, calculating. Each movement was precise, careful, a dance with the malevolent force that seemed to govern the earth beneath his feet. Finally, as the first light of a new dawn painted the horizon with pale gold, Slick prepared to leave. The pickup, laden with barrels, creaked and groaned under the burden, but it held. Slick climbed into the driver's seat, hands gripping the wheel with white-knuckled intensity, heart hammering. He glanced once more at the well. The shadow lingered, coiling and writhing, watching him with an intelligence that sent chills down his spine. Then, with a hiss that seemed like both a warning and a promise, it receded, sinking into the depths of the black gusher. Slick started the engine, tires crunching against the desert floor. The sun climbed higher, burning away the early morning chill, and for a brief, shining moment, he felt hope. He had survived. He had outsmarted the darkness, at least for now. But the desert had its secrets, and the well its hunger. Slick knew, deep down, that this was only the beginning. The shadow was patient. The well was eternal. And the cost of greed, of ambition, of defiance, would come due sooner or later. As the pickup rattled over the shifting sand, Slick whispered a warning to himself, a promise forged in sweat, oil, and fear. I will leave this place. I will live. And I will never dig too deep again. The desert was silent in reply, save for the faint, almost imperceptible laughter of the wind, carrying the echoes of all who had come before, and all who would follow. Slick Malone drove for hours, the desert stretching endlessly on either side, a golden wasteland broken only by the occasional jagged outcrop of rock or the skeletal remains of long-dead scrub. The pickup groaned under the weight of the barrels, tires biting into sand that threatened to swallow the vehicle whole. Sweat beaded along his hairline, stinging his eyes, but the adrenaline coursing through his veins kept him alert. He kept glancing in the rearview mirror, half expecting the shadow to follow, to rise from the desert like some malevolent tide. Each reflection of sand and sky seemed normal, but the memory of what had happened at the well lingered like a phantom, refusing to be ignored. Every rustle of wind, every sudden shift of light, made his muscles tense. By midday, he reached a small, dusty town that had clearly seen better days. Rusted signs swung in the wind, creaking and groaning like the old rig he had left behind. Slick pulled into the only gas station still operational, the proprietor eyeing him warily as he stepped out. The smell of oil clung to him, a dark perfume that marked him as both survivor and sinner. I've got barrels, Slick said simply, nodding toward the pickup. Need someone to take them off my hands. The man hesitated, narrowing his eyes. Where'd you get all that? Slick shrugged. From the well. Out in the desert. Plenty more where it came from. The man's face paled, a flicker of fear crossing his features. You shouldn't mess with that place. People they go out there, they never come back. The earth takes what it wants. Slick frowned, masking the tension gnawing at him. I've got it under control. The man didn't argue. He helped Slick unload the barrels, moving with cautious hands, muttering prayers under his breath. The money exchanged hands quickly, crisp bills that smelled faintly of ink and dust. Slick counted the bills, feeling the weight of both triumph and unease settle in his chest. The well had given him wealth, yes, but at what cost? That night, Slick found himself at a small inn on the edge of town. The bed was hard, the sheets thin and scratchy, but he sank into them with relief. Yet sleep was elusive. Every shadow in the room seemed to flicker and twist, every gust of wind rattling the shutters sounded like a whisper from the desert. The well's black promise had not left him, it lingered, patient, waiting. He awoke in the early hours, drawn by a sense of unease. Outside, the moon hung low and silver in the sky, illuminating the cracked streets of the town. Something was off. The air was thick, almost oily, and the faintest scent of tar drifted on the breeze. Slick's heart hammered. He had left the well behind, yet he could feel its pulse, a low, insistent thrum echoing in the ground beneath the town. He rose quietly, slipping into his jacket, and stepped into the night. The town was silent, but the shadows seemed alive, stretching and twisting in unnatural ways. Slick followed the sensation, walking slowly, each step measured, until he came to a small alleyway behind the inn. And there it was, a thin trail of black, glistening oil running along the cobblestones. Slick's stomach knotted. He knelt, touching the dark liquid, feeling its strange warmth, its almost conscious vibration beneath his fingers. He pulled back, shivering, as the air grew heavier, more oppressive. You can't escape, a voice whispered from the darkness. Slick spun around, heart in his throat. No one was there, yet the sound echoed as if the very walls were speaking. You think you can leave, think you can live without paying, but the well remembers. The well waits. Slick swallowed hard, fear and determination warring in his chest. He had cheated it once, perhaps he could do it again. But the desert, the well, the shadow, it was patient. It had all the time in the world. The next day, Slick attempted to rationalize what had happened. He told himself the desert had been a hallucination, a trick of heat and stress. The shadow, the whispers, the living oil, it had to be a figment of his mind. He tried to focus on mundane tasks, repairing the pickup, planning his next shipment, finding a safe route out of town. Yet the sense of being watched never left him. Even as he moved through the streets, people seemed to glance at him oddly. Children stopped their play and stared, their eyes wide, unblinking, as if they could see something Slick could not. A shopkeeper whispered behind her counter, a prayer or a warning, he could not tell which. Every glance felt like an accusation, every whisper a judgment. By evening, he realized he could not stay in one place. The well had followed him, not in body but in essence, its hunger permeating the very air. He needed distance, movement, perhaps even distraction. He decided to head east, toward the mountains that rose like jagged teeth on the horizon. The journey was grueling. The pickup groaned over sand dunes and rocky paths, its engine straining, mirrors vibrating with the echo of the Blackwell's pulse. Slick kept talking to himself, a mantra to maintain sanity. It's just a trick. It's just fear. It's just oil. Nothing more. But the desert was clever, subtle. It shifted around him, hiding roads, erasing landmarks, turning his compass into a useless ornament. Shadows stretched unnaturally under the moonlight, following, waiting, whispering promises and threats. On the third night, Slick stopped at a rocky outcrop to rest. The stars overhead were brilliant, but even in their cold light, he could see movement, an unnatural shimmer across the desert floor. He froze. The black trail of oil had returned, winding toward him like a snake of darkness. He leapt to the pickup, heart pounding. The engine roared to life, tires spinning as he fought against the shifting sand. The trail followed, inching closer with every heartbeat, a silent predator waiting for the right moment to strike. Slick gritted his teeth, forcing himself to focus, to drive, to survive. Hours passed in a blur of dust and oil, and finally, he reached a canyon that offered the illusion of safety. Slick parked, breath ragged, body trembling from exertion. He leaned against the hood, trying to calm his racing thoughts. He knew the well's shadow would not relent, it never did. It was eternal, and it was patient. The canyon provided temporary relief, shelter from the wind, but it also carried an eerie stillness. Slick sensed movement in the shadows, subtle shifts in the rocks, the faintest hum in the air. The desert was not empty here, it was alive, watching, waiting. That night, as he lay in the back of the pickup, the moonlight casting pale shadows across the canyon walls, Slick dreamed again. The dream was vivid, horrifying. He was standing at the well, barrels stacked high around him, yet Spade emerged from the blackness, his face twisted in silent agony, eyes pleading. The shadow loomed, massive now, tendrils stretching across the sky, a storm of darkness and oil, and the well itself seemed to pulse with malevolent life. Slick awoke screaming, clutching his chest, body drenched in sweat. The dream lingered, clinging to him like a second skin. He realized, with a clarity that chilled him, that this was no mere hallucination. The well was alive. The shadow was real. And it was only a matter of time before it claimed him fully. He made a plan, shaky but determined. He would move at first light, heading toward the nearest railroad. There, he hoped to find transport, a way to leave the desert behind forever. The barrels would follow eventually, but his survival required speed and cunning. The well could wait for the rest of its due, but not for him. As dawn broke, painting the canyon in gold and rose, Slick started the engine, heart pounding, senses heightened. He drove cautiously, every shadow a potential threat, every whisper of wind a warning. The desert stretched on endlessly, the black pulse of the well beneath it, a constant reminder that his reprieve was temporary. And through it all, a single thought repeated in his mind, a mantra born of fear and determination: I will survive. I will leave. I will live. But the desert had its secrets, and the well its hunger. Slick knew he could run, but he could not hide. And deep in the sands, the shadow waited, patient, eternal, insatiable. The railroad appeared on the horizon like a ribbon of steel cutting through the desert, gleaming in the midday sun. Slick Malone's pickup groaned and rattled as he approached, wheels kicking up clouds of dust, the barrels of black gold stacked precariously in the back. The wind was sharper now, carrying the faint, cloying scent of tar. Slick's heart beat in sync with the pulse he could feel beneath the sand, as if the well itself were marking his progress, counting his steps, measuring his resolve. He slowed the truck as he reached a small siding, a forgotten platform with peeling paint and rusted rails. The wooden boards groaned under his weight as he stepped down, scanning the tracks for signs of life. Only silence greeted him, punctuated by the occasional creak of a telegraph line and the distant cry of a hawk circling the desert. Slick knew better than to trust the quiet. The desert's silence was never innocent. Minutes stretched like hours, the sun rising high, blazing down on his sweat-slicked back. Slick wiped his brow and stepped forward, testing the heat radiating from the rails. The metal was almost unbearable to touch, shimmering like molten silver. He glanced at the barrels, then back at the tracks, debating whether he could move them quickly enough before the shadow made its next appearance. And then he heard it, the softest of hisses, almost imperceptible at first, but unmistakably present. Slick froze. The hairs on the back of his neck bristled. The black trail appeared again, slithering across the desert floor like a living creature, inching toward him with deliberate patience. "You never learn," a voice whispered, dripping with malice and glee, echoing from everywhere and nowhere. Slick swallowed hard, gripping the steering wheel like a lifeline. "You think you can escape. You think you can cheat me." Slick's mind raced. He had come too far to falter now. He couldn't go back. The well had claimed too much already. Spade's disappearance was proof enough. The desert, the oil, the shadow, they were not forces to be bargained with. They demanded submission, obedience, or death. He glanced down at the barrels. There was no choice. He would have to risk moving them across the blistering tracks, dragging the oily weight toward the nearest train car. One misstep, one delay, and the shadow would strike. Slick squared his shoulders and began the arduous task, each step a calculated gamble. The sun climbed higher, unrelenting, beating down with an intensity that made the air shimmer. Sweat poured from Slick in rivulets, soaking his shirt and streaking his face with dirt and oil. He gritted his teeth, moving the barrels slowly, carefully, the scent of black tar strong and intoxicating. His arms ached, his back screamed, but he forced himself onward. Then, without warning, the desert seemed to shift. The sand beneath his feet trembled, and the black trail surged forward with unnatural speed. Slick stumbled, heart in his throat, and one barrel toppled, rolling toward the tracks. The shadow coiled, rising like a black wave, tendrils stretching impossibly high, eyes gleaming with malicious delight. "No!" Slick shouted, diving toward the barrel. His hands closed around it, saving it from falling completely off the platform, but the effort threw him off balance. He hit the ground hard, scraping his elbows, tasting blood and dust. The shadow hovered over him, pulsing, alive, exuding a presence that made the desert itself seem to shrink in fear. "You belong to me," it hissed, the words vibrating through the air, through the ground, through Slick's bones. "You think you can leave? You are mine. The oil is mine. The desert is mine. And soon you will be mine as well." Slick struggled to his feet, eyes blazing with a mix of fear and determination. "Not yet," he spat, voice trembling but fierce. "I'm not yours. I won't let you take me." The shadow recoiled slightly, almost in amusement, almost in curiosity. It flowed back, dissolving partially into the air, but the pulse of the well beneath the desert continued unabated. Slick understood instinctively. It was a test, a warning, a challenge. The desert could wait, but the well never did. He dragged the barrels onto the train car, stacking them as quickly as he could. Each movement was deliberate, precise, driven by desperation. Sweat and oil coated his hands, making the task more difficult, but he pressed on. The sun beat down, relentless, and the shadow lingered at the edge of his vision, a constant reminder of the cost of failure. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the last barrel was secured. Slick stepped back, chest heaving, sweat and grime covering him from head to toe. He glanced at the desert, at the black line that was the shadow, and dared a small, fleeting smirk. "You'll have to do better than that," he muttered, mostly to himself. The train whistle blew faintly in the distance, a reminder that his escape was still possible, still within reach. Slick climbed into the driver's seat of the pickup, heart racing, and started the engine. The rumble echoed through the siding, a defiant roar in the face of the shadow. As the train approached, Slick realized the barrels could not all fit at once. He would have to make multiple trips, each one a gamble, each one a potential meeting with the desert's wrath. But he had no choice. The oil and his life depended on it. The first trip was tense but uneventful. Slick loaded as many barrels as the train could carry and secured them with rope and tarps. He felt the weight of each barrel like a silent accusation, a reminder of the darkness that had birthed them. The train would take them to civilization, to safety, to a place where the desert and the well could not touch them, at least, he hoped. As the train began to move, Slick felt a strange relief. The desert stretched behind him, endless and ominous, but the shadow had receded for now, hiding beneath the heat and sand. He allowed himself a moment to breathe, to plan the next trip. But deep down, he knew it was only temporary. The well was patient. The desert was eternal. And the shadow would return. Night fell once more, and Slick found himself alone on the platform, staring at the stars. The desert was quiet, but the silence was heavy, almost suffocating. He thought of Spade again, the thin man lost to the well's hunger, and shivered. His greed had spared him so far, but the desert demanded repayment, and he could not fool it forever. He slept in short bursts, dreams haunted by black liquid and endless hunger. The shadow appeared in fragments, flickering at the edge of his vision, whispering promises and threats. Each time he woke, the sense of being watched intensified, a low vibration in his chest that would not be ignored. The following morning, Slick continued his task with grim determination. He loaded more barrels, each one a reminder of what he had risked, what he had survived, and what still lay ahead. The desert stretched endlessly, indifferent, but the pulse beneath the sand remained, a steady, unyielding beat that mirrored his own heart. By midday, he had completed the second shipment. The train moved slowly, laboriously, carrying the barrels away from the desert, away from the well. Slick allowed himself a brief sense of victory, a fleeting triumph. But even as he smiled, the shadow flickered at the edge of his vision, watching, waiting, eternal and insatiable. Slick knew he could not linger. The desert was patient, and so was the well. He climbed into the pickup once more, heart racing, hands gripping the wheel, mind focused. Every mile he drove was a gamble, every glance in the mirror a test of nerve. The shadow could strike at any moment, and he had no choice but to move, to survive, to outlast the desert's hunger. The train disappeared into the distance, the barrels out of reach for now, but the desert remained, stretching endlessly, black and gold, alive and watching. Slick felt the pulse beneath the sand again, slow and steady, a reminder that the well's hunger was not sated. He had survived Spade, survived the shadow, survived the desert, but the test was far from over. And somewhere, deep beneath the sands, the well waited, patient, eternal, insatiable. The pickup rattled along a cracked desert road, the tires crunching over stones and sand alike. Slick Malone's hands were raw from gripping the wheel, knuckles white, sweat running down his back in rivulets that stung his eyes and made his vision blur. The sun hung overhead like a blazing eye, merciless and unwavering, casting harsh shadows across the barren landscape. In the rearview mirror, Slick glimpsed the black gleam of oil lingering at the edges of the horizon, a reminder that the well and its shadow were never far behind. His mind raced, replaying the events since Spade's disappearance. The gushing oil, the writhing shadow, the pulsing sense of life beneath the desert, it had all been too real to dismiss. Yet he had survived, and so far, he had escaped with the barrels of black gold. That was enough, wasn't it? The road twisted and dipped, and in the distance, Slick could make out the faint outline of a town perched like a mirage on the horizon. Buildings huddled together, paint peeling, windows dusty, streets empty. It was the kind of place where everyone knew everyone, and outsiders were scrutinized with suspicion. Slick slowed the pickup, heart hammering. Civilization offered safety, yes, but it also came with eyes and ears and perhaps some curiosity that could endanger his precarious fortune. He pulled into the center of town and parked near the only visible inn, the Silver Cactus. A bell tinkled faintly as he entered, and a single innkeeper, thin and hawk-faced, looked up from a ledger. "Evening," Slick said, voice careful, controlled. "I need a room for the night and a place to hide for a while." The innkeeper's eyes narrowed. "Hide? You're carrying more than yourself, I take it." Slick's lips pressed together, but he nodded slightly. "Something like that. Just need a place out of sight." The man studied him, suspicion etched across his face. Finally, he gestured toward a back room. "Room's small, but it'll do. Just don't make trouble. Town doesn't take kindly to strangers who arrive with secrets." Slick followed the man upstairs, each creak of the steps echoing in the quiet inn. The room was cramped, dusty, a single bed with a thin mattress, but it offered a temporary reprieve. He closed the door behind him, sliding the bolt into place, and exhaled slowly. For a moment, he allowed himself to breathe, to feel safe. But the desert had a way of following. That night, he dreamed again of the well. In the dream, the black liquid rose higher than mountains, tendrils reaching skyward, each one dripping with darkness and malice. Spade's face emerged from the oily depths, eyes wide, mouth open in a silent scream. And the shadow, massive and shifting, coiled around the well, pulsing with life and hunger. Slick woke in a cold sweat, the remnants of the dream clinging to him like cobwebs. The air in the room felt heavy, oppressive, and for a brief moment, he thought he heard the faintest hiss, a whisper threading through the stillness. He shook his head. "It's just dreams," he muttered, but the words rang hollow even to his own ears. He knew the desert, the well, and the shadow were patient. They would wait, and they would follow. The next morning, Slick resolved to move again. He couldn't linger. The well's pulse had followed him this far, and he knew that at any moment, the shadow could manifest fully, striking with all the patience and malice it had cultivated over decades, perhaps centuries. He packed a small bag with essentials, leaving most of his personal belongings behind. His priority was the oil, the barrels that represented both his survival and the well's unspoken claim. He returned to the pickup, glancing at the horizon. The desert shimmered in the heat, a vast expanse of gold and black. Somewhere out there, the well waited. The shadow lurked. But Slick was determined. He would not succumb, not yet. Hours passed as he drove, the town shrinking behind him. He navigated by instinct, following the roads that seemed most likely to lead to the nearest highway. But the desert was unpredictable. Paths shifted beneath his wheels, signs warped in the heat, and at times, it felt as if the earth itself were trying to mislead him, to turn him back toward the well. By late afternoon, Slick pulled over at a shallow canyon to rest. He climbed onto the hood of the pickup, eyes scanning the horizon. The wind whistled softly, carrying the faintest scent of tar. He frowned, feeling the pulse beneath the sand once more. The well's hunger was never satiated, and he could feel it reaching for him even now. As he sat, a small movement caught his eye. A figure appeared on the distant dunes, thin and hunched, moving with the awkward gait of someone who had been hardened by the desert. Slick's stomach tightened. The figure approached cautiously, hands raised in a gesture of peace, but there was something unnatural about it. The way it moved, the way the sand seemed to part around it, reminded Slick too vividly of the shadow. He stood, squinting. "Who's there?" he called, voice firm but wary. The figure paused, then quickened its pace. Slick realized with a jolt it was human. A man, perhaps a wanderer or another drifter, sunburned and grimy, carrying a small pack. "Hey," the man shouted as he approached. "You got some water? I've been out here for days, barely survived." Slick hesitated, instincts torn between caution and the recognition of a fellow human in need. He gestured toward the cab of the pickup. "Come on. But keep your hands where I can see them." The man climbed in, grateful, and Slick handed him a canteen. As the man drank, Slick studied him carefully. There was nothing immediately threatening, but the desert had taught him that appearances could be deceiving. "Name's Slick," he said cautiously. "And you are?" "Call me Rafe, the man replied, voice hoarse. Been out here too long, trying to make my way east. Didn't expect to find, well, anything alive. Slick nodded, feeling a strange mixture of relief and suspicion. He resumed driving, the pickup groaning under the load, and kept an eye on Rafe. He talked sparingly, answering only questions, keeping his own story vague. He didn't want anyone knowing about the well, the shadow, or the black fortune he carried. Some things, he had learned, were safer kept buried. As dusk fell, painting the desert in streaks of blood and gold, Slick found a narrow pass between two ridges. The road here was treacherous, loose sand and jagged rocks threatening to topple the barrels. He slowed, maneuvering carefully. But then, without warning, the air shifted. The temperature dropped unnaturally, and a strange stillness descended, as if the desert itself had paused to watch. Slick's heart pounded. He glanced at Rafe, who tensed, sensing the sudden change. The shadow had arrived, though not in full form yet. Tendrils of black appeared in the corners of their vision, slithering across the sand like snakes, creeping closer with every heartbeat. You can't run, a voice hissed, echoing from the ground, the air, everywhere at once. Slick's stomach churned as the shadow grew, coiling around the edges of the canyon, waiting, patient. He gritted his teeth and drove faster, navigating the pass with skill born of desperation. The barrels shifted, clanging together, threatening to tumble. Slick cursed under his breath, hands white on the wheel, every nerve screaming. The shadow followed, fluid and merciless, eyes like pits of black fire. By nightfall, they emerged from the pass, the canyon behind them. The desert opened up, and for a brief moment, Slick allowed himself a breath. The shadow had not followed completely, but he knew it was patient. Eternal. Waiting for him to falter. He stopped at a small grove of scrub trees to rest, letting Rafe out to stretch. Slick sat on the hood, staring at the stars, feeling the pulse beneath the sand once more. It was a low, insistent beat, a reminder that the well's hunger was never sated, and that no matter how far he drove, he could not escape entirely. Rafe returned, carrying 2 tin cups of water. He handed one to Slick, who accepted silently. They sat together in uneasy silence, listening to the wind whispering through the scrub, carrying faint scents of tar and oil. Slick's thoughts drifted to Spade, to the barrels, to the shadow, and to the realization that survival was only temporary. The desert had taught him patience, endurance, and fear, and he knew he would need all 3 in the days ahead. As the night deepened, Slick whispered to himself, a mantra of determination: I will survive. I will leave this place. And I will never dig too deep again. The desert remained silent, but the pulse beneath it continued, steady and unyielding. Somewhere, deep beneath the sand, the well waited, patient, eternal, and hungry. The sun rose like a molten coin over the desert, burning away the chill of night and casting long shadows that twisted unnaturally over the sand. Slick Malone leaned against the hood of the pickup, rubbing his eyes, feeling the stiff ache in his joints from hours of tense driving and restless sleep. Rafe stirred beside him, yawning, eyes squinting against the harsh light. Neither spoke immediately. Words felt unnecessary, even dangerous, in the heavy silence of the desert dawn. The previous night's encounter with the shadow had left a residue of unease that clung to Slick's skin, his thoughts, even his breath. Every movement in the sand seemed amplified, every whisper of wind suspicious. He realized that the desert itself had changed, responding to his intrusion, to the barrels of black gold he had carried so far. He had been warned, threatened, and tested, but for now, he had survived. That fragile victory was all he had. We need to move, Slick said finally, voice low, cautious. The well it's still following. We can't linger here. Rafe nodded, wiping sweat from his brow. Where to? There's nothing but sand for miles. Slick studied the horizon, eyes scanning the rippling heat and shifting dunes. East, he said. There's a highway that runs through a mining town. We can find a way to load the barrels onto a truck or rail there. After that we keep moving. They packed quickly, the sun rising relentlessly, turning the sand into a shimmering expanse of white gold. The barrels in the back of the pickup groaned and shifted, the tar's weight making each movement a careful exercise in balance. Slick climbed into the driver's seat, gripping the wheel with white-knuckled intensity. Rafe settled into the passenger side, surveying the terrain with wary eyes. The desert stretched endlessly, unforgiving and silent. As they drove, Slick's mind kept returning to the well, to the shadow, and to Spade. The image of his thin, desperate friend lost beneath the black depths haunted him, a reminder of what could happen if he faltered. The desert demanded respect, demanded fear, and most of all, demanded survival. Hours passed with nothing but the rattle of the pickup and the hiss of wind over sand. Then, in the distance, Slick saw movement, not human, not animal, but something strange, unnatural. A flicker of black shimmered at the edge of his vision, rising and coiling in a way that no ordinary desert phenomenon should. The pulse beneath the sand grew stronger, insistent, almost like a heartbeat that echoed through Slick's chest. He realized, with grim clarity, that the shadow had followed, patient and relentless. "It's coming," he muttered under his breath. Rafe stiffened, noticing the subtle shift in the air. Slick adjusted his grip on the wheel. "Keep calm. It's testing us. Don't look away, don't panic. Just move." The black tendrils rose higher, creeping along the sand toward them, fluid and alive, twisting in shapes that defied nature. The heat shimmered, distorting the horizon, and the very ground beneath the tires trembled ever so slightly. Slick forced himself to focus on the road, on the pickup, on every precise movement necessary to navigate the treacherous desert. Hours blurred into a tense, surreal procession. The desert seemed to expand and contract, time itself stretching and bending under the shadow's gaze. Slick spoke little, answering only when necessary, his mind entirely consumed by the dual tasks of survival and transport. Rafe's presence was a quiet reminder of humanity, but it also added weight. Someone else depended on him now, someone else's life was entwined with the barrels, with the desert, with the shadow. As the sun dipped low in the sky, painting the desert in shades of blood and gold, they reached a small ridge overlooking a valley. Slick slowed, scanning the area. Far below, a ribbon of asphalt glimmered faintly, the highway they had sought. Relief washed over him briefly, but he forced himself to stay alert. The shadow had followed too far to retreat now, and he knew it would strike at any misstep. The descent to the highway was treacherous. Loose sand and jagged rocks threatened to unbalance the barrels, and every sudden jolt made Slick's stomach lurch. The shadow lingered at the edges of his vision, its presence subtle but unmistakable, pulsating with a hunger that seemed to draw energy from the desert itself. When they finally reached the highway, Slick parked at a small, abandoned rest stop. The asphalt was cracked, weeds growing through the fissures, and the surrounding desert stretched endlessly. They unloaded the first set of barrels cautiously, stacking them against a crumbling wall. Each barrel felt heavier than the last, not just in weight but in consequence. Each one was a testament to survival, a reminder of the well's insatiable appetite. Slick looked at Rafe, whose face was pale from exertion and worry. "We need to be quick," he said. "Once we get the barrels onto a proper vehicle, we move. The desert, it doesn't forget. And the well, it doesn't forgive." Rafe nodded, understanding the gravity of the moment. They worked in near silence, muscles burning, sweat mixing with grime and oil. The horizon darkened as twilight approached, and the first stars began to prick the sky. In the fading light, the desert seemed alive, every shadow exaggerated, every movement suspicious. Slick paused, glancing at the barrels lined up on the asphalt. The shadow appeared then, not fully formed, but enough, coiling tendrils of darkness rising from the desert floor, eyes glinting like obsidian, watching, waiting. He felt the pulse beneath the asphalt, the hunger of the well echoing through the ground, and he knew it was testing him again, measuring his fear, his resolve, his cunning. "You can't hide," the voice hissed, disembodied yet everywhere. "You cannot cheat me. The desert, the well, the shadow, they are eternal. And you are only a moment." Slick's jaw tightened. "Not yet," he muttered. "I've survived this long. I'm not giving up now." Night fell fully, enveloping the highway in darkness. The desert was alive with faint whispers and distant shadows that moved with impossible grace. Slick and Rafe worked under the pale light of a crescent moon, moving barrels toward a dilapidated truck that they found hidden behind the rest stop. It was old, rusty, and barely operational, but it would have to do. By the time the last barrel was secured, Slick's hands were raw, his body trembling from exhaustion. The desert seemed to pulse around them, the faint hiss of the shadow threading through the air, a subtle reminder that their reprieve was temporary. The well had been cheated once, but it remembered, and it waited. Slick climbed into the driver's seat of the truck, heart hammering, Rafe beside him, gripping the edge of the seat for support. He started the engine, the vehicle groaning and rattling as it came to life. The tires spun on the cracked asphalt, and they began to move, heading east toward the promise of civilization, of safety. For the first few miles, relief washed over Slick. The desert receded behind them, the shadow absent for the moment, and the pulse beneath the sand seemed to dim. Perhaps they had outsmarted it, at least temporarily. Perhaps the well's hunger could wait. But the desert is patient. And the well is eternal. As the truck rumbled down the highway, Slick couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The darkness seemed too thick, the shadows too deliberate. Somewhere in the distance, just beyond the reach of the headlights, the black tendrils of the shadow lingered, coiling, waiting, measuring. Slick's hands tightened on the wheel, knuckles white. He glanced at Rafe, whose eyes were wide, reflecting fear and awe. "We'll make it," Slick said, voice steady but firm, more to convince himself than anyone else. "We'll get through this. We have to." The desert stretched endlessly on either side, a living, breathing entity that refused to forgive, refused to forget. And somewhere beneath it, the well pulsed with hunger, patient, eternal, insatiable. Slick whispered to himself, a mantra against fear, against the shadow, against the darkness, "I will survive. I will leave this place. I will never dig too deep again." But the desert had its secrets, and the well had its price. The shadow would follow, the hunger would grow, and the night was far from over. The truck rattled over the cracked highway, tires bouncing against the uneven asphalt as Slick Malone and Rafe pressed eastward. Night had fully claimed the desert, stretching out like a dark, endless sea around them. The stars glittered faintly overhead, but even their cold light could not penetrate the oppressive weight of the desert's silence. Slick's eyes darted constantly between the road and the horizon, searching for any sign of the shadow, any flicker of movement that might herald the return of the well's hunger. Rafe's hands were tense on his knees, his eyes flicking nervously toward the rearview mirror. "You sure we're not being followed?" he asked, voice low and cautious. Slick didn't answer immediately. He knew instinctively that the shadow would not strike openly, not yet. It was patient, watching, waiting for a moment of weakness. "Not yet," he said finally. "But it's out there. Always." Hours passed in tense silence, the truck's engine growling through the night as they made slow progress. The desert seemed to stretch endlessly, barren and unyielding, yet alive with subtle motion. Every shifting sand dune, every distant silhouette, was a potential threat. Slick had learned long ago that the desert was never empty, never silent, and never forgiving. Around midnight, they came upon a narrow canyon, walls rising like jagged teeth on either side. The highway narrowed, forcing the truck to crawl along the uneven asphalt. Slick slowed, muscles coiled, senses sharpened to a razor's edge. The shadow could strike here, where escape routes were limited and the terrain worked in its favor. As they entered the canyon, the air grew heavier, thicker, almost viscous. The pulse beneath the desert intensified, resonating in Slick's chest, vibrating through the metal frame of the truck. The black tendrils appeared again, curling along the edges of the canyon like living smoke, moving with deliberate patience. Slick felt a shiver run down his spine. The shadow had returned. "You see that?" Rafe whispered, eyes wide in terror. Slick didn't respond immediately. He focused on the road, hands gripping the wheel, knuckles white. "Keep calm," he said finally. "It's testing us. Don't look away. Just keep moving." The tendrils rose higher, twisting and coiling, their tips glistening with black oil that shimmered under the moonlight. The pulse beneath the ground was relentless, steady, as if the desert itself were alive, a vast organism feeding on fear and greed. Slick forced himself to ignore the sensation of being watched, the cold dread crawling up his spine, and concentrated on the narrow path ahead. Then, without warning, the ground beneath the truck trembled violently. Slick's heart leapt into his throat as the vehicle jolted, tires skidding on loose rocks. One of the barrels shifted dangerously, clanging against the others. He fought to maintain control, swerving sharply, narrowly avoiding the canyon wall. The shadow surged, rising like a black wave behind them, its tendrils snapping toward the truck with terrifying precision. Slick's breath came in short, ragged bursts. The desert had given no quarter before, and it would not now. The pulse beneath the asphalt grew louder, more insistent, hammering against his skull, a relentless drum of impending doom. "We need to get out of this canyon," Rafe shouted, fear cracking his voice. Slick nodded grimly. "Hold on. Don't move. Keep your eyes on me, not the shadows." The truck roared forward, tires spinning over loose rocks and shifting sand. Each moment felt stretched to infinity, each second a test of nerve and skill. The barrels clanged violently, threatening to tip and crush them both under the weight of their contents. The shadow coiled and twisted, reaching higher, almost tasting, almost grasping, but it held back, as if savoring the tension, the fear, the inevitable failure. Finally, the canyon opened into a wide valley. Slick pressed the accelerator, the truck lurching forward with a roar. They emerged into open desert, the shadow receding momentarily, melting into the dunes. For a heartbeat, relief washed over him, though he knew it was temporary. The desert and the well had infinite patience, and the shadow would return at the precise moment it calculated he was most vulnerable. They drove in tense silence for hours, the truck laboring over the cracked asphalt, barrels secured but precariously balanced. The horizon hinted at civilization, a faint glow in the distance, promising safety and temporary reprieve. Slick allowed himself a small measure of hope, but it was fleeting. He knew better than to trust hope in the desert, especially when the well's hunger waited just beneath the sand. As dawn approached, the sky shifting from ink black to pale rose, they spotted the faint outlines of a small mining town. The buildings were squat, industrial, and scattered haphazardly across the landscape. Smoke drifted lazily from chimneys, and the distant sound of machinery hummed faintly in the air. Civilization. It was a welcome sight, though Slick knew the desert could follow, and the shadow could strike even here, if it chose. They approached cautiously, scanning for signs of danger. The town appeared deserted at first, streets empty, machinery idle. Slick parked near an old warehouse, its doors rusted and half open. It would serve as a temporary haven, a place to unload and hide the barrels before arranging transportation further east. Slick and Rafe jumped down from the truck, moving quickly but cautiously. Each barrel felt heavier than the last, laden not only with oil but with the weight of fear and anticipation. The warehouse was dim, dust motes drifting in the weak shafts of light that pierced the rusted windows. They stacked the barrels carefully, securing them behind crates and machinery, creating a makeshift barrier. For a moment, silence fell. The desert was still, the shadow absent, perhaps waiting, perhaps calculating. Slick wiped sweat from his brow, muscles screaming in protest from hours of tension and exertion. He allowed himself a deep breath, the first in what felt like an eternity. "We need to find transport," Slick said finally. "Truck, train, something. We can't stay here long." Rafe nodded, still pale and tense. "There's a rail line about 10 miles east," he said. "Abandoned, but it might still work." Slick studied the horizon, noting the rising sun casting long shadows across the desert. "Good. We move before it gets too hot. The shadow it's patient, but the desert can't hold forever." They rested briefly, conserving energy, drinking water sparingly. The weight of the barrels, the presence of the shadow, and the constant pulse beneath the ground kept them on edge. Every sound, every shift of sand, every distant rumble made them tense. The desert was a predator, and they were prey. By mid-morning, they loaded the barrels into the pickup once more. The truck groaned under the weight, but it held together. Slick climbed into the driver's seat, Rafe beside him, and they set off toward the distant rail line. The desert stretched endlessly, shimmering under the harsh sun, shadows flickering at the edge of vision, hints of the well's presence lingering in every gust of wind and every subtle vibration under the tires. Hours passed, and the landscape remained unforgiving. The shadow had not attacked, but Slick felt its watchful presence, patient and eternal, following them across the desert. The barrels were precious, dangerous, and cursed all at once. They represented survival, greed, and the unyielding hunger of the well beneath the sands. Finally, as the sun began to dip toward the horizon, they spotted the rusted tracks of the rail line. It was a relic, barely maintained, but functional enough for their purposes. Slick slowed, scanning for signs of danger. The desert seemed quieter here, the pulse beneath the sand steady but distant. Perhaps they had reached a temporary haven. Slick parked the truck near a small siding, and together they began unloading the barrels once more. Each one was heavier than the last, sweat mixing with oil on their hands and arms. The shadow had not attacked, but the tension was palpable. It was waiting, patient, eternal, and hungry. By nightfall, the barrels were stacked near an old freight car, ready to be transported further east. Slick leaned against the truck, muscles trembling, body drenched in sweat and grime. Rafe sat nearby, silent, exhausted. For a moment, they allowed themselves a small measure of relief. But the desert never forgets. And the well never forgives. The night was thick with desert silence, broken only by the faint creak of the old freight car and the whisper of wind through the skeletal remains of scrub trees. Slick Malone sat on the hood of the pickup, staring at the stacked barrels, each one a gleaming monument of black gold. Moonlight danced across the tarred surfaces, reflecting in eerie patterns, like ripples across a dark pool. He could feel the pulse beneath the ground, faint but insistent, a low vibration that echoed through the soles of his boots. The well had not forgotten. It was patient. Eternal. Waiting. Rafe sat beside him, silent, hands wrapped around a tin cup of water. His eyes kept darting to the shadows, to the distant dunes, as if expecting the tendrils of darkness to rise at any moment. "You think it'll come tonight?" he asked quietly, voice trembling. Slick didn't answer immediately. He had learned that words were heavy, dangerous. Speaking too freely could invite attention, could draw the shadow closer, could awaken the hunger beneath the sand. Finally, he said, "It's always coming. Whether it's tonight, tomorrow, or the next day, it doesn't matter. We survive by moving, by staying one step ahead." Rafe nodded, swallowing hard. The desert had a way of stripping a man down, exposing fear, stripping away bravado and false confidence. Slick knew that well. He'd survived Spade's disappearance, survived the Shadow's first attack, survived the endless heat and treacherous terrain. But survival didn't mean safety. Not yet. Not ever. The two men worked cautiously through the night, moving the barrels closer to the freight car, checking each one for stability. Every sound, the creak of metal, the faint rustle of sand, even the distant cry of a desert bird, made their hearts jump. The desert seemed alive with anticipation, a predator observing its prey, patient and calculating. By the first hint of dawn, the barrels were secured inside the freight car. Slick wiped sweat from his brow, muscles aching, mind buzzing with the tension of the past days. For a moment, he allowed himself to breathe, to savor the small victory. They had made it this far, against the desert, the shadow, and the well. They had outlasted the first wave. But the desert is patient. The well is eternal. And the shadow never tires. The rail car sat quietly, as though waiting for the next stage of the plan. Slick climbed onto the roof of the freight car, scanning the horizon. The desert stretched endlessly in every direction, golden and black, shimmering with heat. The pulse beneath the ground was faint now, but he knew it would grow stronger once movement began, once the freight car rattled along the tracks, closer to civilization, closer to safety, or closer to doom. "We move at first light," Slick told Rafe. "The longer we stay here, the more chance it has to find us." Rafe nodded, silent, exhausted. The desert had taken its toll on both of them. Their clothes were caked with dust and oil, skin sunburned and raw, bodies tense and aching. Yet, despite the exhaustion, a shared determination bound them together, survival, and the promise of escaping the well's hunger. As dawn broke, painting the desert in pale gold and pink, Slick and Rafe climbed into the pickup once more. The freight car awaited, and with it, the next stage of their journey. The barrels were secure, But nothing in the desert was guaranteed. Every mile, every turn of the wheels, was a gamble against the shadow, against the well, against the desert itself. The engine roared to life, a defiant sound in the quiet morning. They drove toward the freight car, dust kicking up behind them, each movement deliberate and cautious. The desert seemed to lean closer, the pulse beneath their feet growing stronger, more insistent. The well's hunger was patient, but it was awakening. They reached the freight car just as the sun climbed higher, casting harsh light across the tracks. Slick jumped down, checking the barrels, securing them further, making sure they wouldn't tip or shift during the journey. Rafe assisted, both of them moving with practiced precision, aware of the slightest sound, the smallest shadow, the faintest tremor beneath the ground. Hours passed as they worked, the desert growing hotter, the sun beating down with relentless intensity. Sweat poured from their bodies, mixing with oil and dust, but they pressed on, determined to finish the task. The freight car had to move, the barrels had to be transported, and they had to escape before the shadow fully manifested again. Finally, by mid-afternoon, the freight car was ready. Slick climbed into the driver's seat of the pickup once more, Rafe beside him, hearts pounding with anticipation and fear. The connection to the car was secure, and they began to move, slowly at first, the wheels rattling over the tracks, the desert stretching endlessly on either side. The shadow did not appear immediately. For a brief moment, relief washed over them. Perhaps they had outsmarted it again, for now. Perhaps the well's hunger could wait. But Slick knew better. The desert and the well were patient. And the shadow never forgot. As the truck pulled the freight car along the rails, the pulse beneath the desert grew stronger, more insistent, reverberating through the wheels, through the metal, through their bones. The black tendrils flickered at the edges of vision, subtle, almost invisible, but unmistakable. It was testing them again, gauging fear, patience, and endurance. Slick kept his eyes fixed on the tracks ahead, hands white on the wheel, muscles taut with tension. Every jolt of the car, every clank of metal, sent a shiver through him. The desert was alive, the well was patient, and the shadow was waiting. Hours passed, and the terrain shifted, desert giving way to scrub and rocky outcrops. The pulse beneath the tracks continued, steady and insistent, a reminder that they were never truly safe. The barrels remained secure, but the weight of their contents seemed heavier with every mile, a tangible measure of the danger and temptation that had brought them this far. By evening, they approached the outskirts of a small town, lights flickering faintly in the distance. Civilization, or at least its semblance, promised safety and temporary reprieve. Slick allowed himself a small measure of hope, though he knew it was fragile. The shadow could strike anywhere, at any moment, and the desert had taught him that hope was a dangerous luxury. They slowed as they entered the town, the freight car rattling behind them, dust rising in ghostly clouds. Slick's eyes scanned the streets, searching for a secure location to offload the barrels and hide from prying eyes. The town seemed quiet, almost too quiet, but it was better than the open desert. At least here, they could find cover. Slick parked near an old warehouse, its walls weathered and rusted, doors half open. He jumped down, checking the barrels, ensuring they were stable. Rafe followed, moving with caution, eyes scanning the shadows, aware that danger could emerge from anywhere. As they worked to unload the barrels, the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows that twisted unnaturally across the ground. The desert had followed them, patient and eternal, its hunger manifesting in subtle, creeping ways. The pulse beneath the ground was faint but persistent, a reminder that the well was never far, never forgiving, never satisfied. Slick wiped sweat from his brow, muscles trembling from exhaustion. Rafe leaned against a wall, silent, still tense. They had made it this far, survived the desert, the shadow, and the well's first tests. But survival was never permanent. The desert demanded payment, the well demanded tribute, and the shadow waited for the precise moment to strike. Night settled fully over the town, stars glittering faintly overhead. The barrels were secure inside the warehouse, the freight car parked nearby, and for the first time in days, Slick allowed himself a brief moment of rest. But the desert's pulse was never far, the shadow's hunger never absent, and the well eternal, patient, and hungry, waited beneath the sand. Slick whispered to himself, a mantra of determination and defiance. I will survive. I will leave this place. I will never dig too deep again. But the desert had its secrets. The well had its price. And the shadow never tires. The warehouse smelled of rust, dust, and the faint, acrid tang of the black oil. Slick Malone leaned against the stacked barrels, his muscles screaming from exhaustion, and listened to the faint creak of the old building settling under its own age. Rafe sat nearby, hunched over, rubbing his arms against the chill that had crept in with the desert night. Even inside the relative safety of walls, the pulse beneath the ground persisted, subtle but insistent, reminding them that the desert, the well, and the shadow were never far away. We can't stay here long, Slick said finally, voice low and measured. Someone will notice. We need a plan, and we need it fast. Rafe nodded, eyes scanning the darkness beyond the cracked windows. There's a rail line that runs further east, he said. Abandoned mostly, but we could use it. Maybe get the barrels on a freight train if one comes through. Slick's jaw tightened. It was risky. The desert had proven that patience was its greatest weapon, and the shadow had already followed them across miles of wasteland. Any delay, any misstep, could be fatal. Then we prepare, he said. Tonight, we get ready. At first light, we move. Hours dragged as they worked in silence, double-checking barrels, securing the freight car, and planning their route. Every sound, distant footsteps, creaking wood, the whisper of wind through broken windows made them tense. The shadow had not attacked yet, but its presence lingered, an invisible weight pressing down on their nerves. By midnight, exhaustion was a constant companion. Slick lit a small lantern, casting weak, wavering light across the barrels. He studied the shadows, every crevice, every corner of the warehouse, every flicker of movement. The desert had taught him to be cautious, and the shadow had taught him fear. Survival required vigilance, and complacency could mean death. Rafe leaned against a crate, eyes half closed, muttering under his breath. I can't believe we made it this far, he said. It's like the desert, it wants us to fail. Slick nodded, his mind replaying the events of the past days, the barrels stolen from the well, the relentless chase, the shadow coiling and testing them, the pulse beneath the sand that had haunted every step. It's not the desert, he said. It's the well. It's the shadow. They're patient, eternal, and hungry. And they always win eventually if you let them. Outside, the wind rose, rattling the warehouse and stirring the sand beyond the cracked walls. Slick felt it in his bones, the pulse growing stronger, almost like a heartbeat syncing with his own. The shadow was near, though invisible, testing, calculating, preparing for the moment when it would strike. He shivered and tightened his grip on the lantern. Hours passed slowly. The desert night seemed to stretch endlessly, time losing all meaning. Every creak, every gust of wind, every shifting shadow made the hair on the back of his neck stand up. He watched Rafe sleep lightly, body tensed, mind alert even in slumber. The desert's lessons had been harsh, but effective. Fear was survival, vigilance was life, and exhaustion was a liability. As dawn approached, Slick climbed back into the pickup, checking the tires, the engine, and the connection to the freight car. Every detail mattered. One loose bolt, one slip, and the barrels, along with their lives, could be lost. Rafe joined him, silent but alert, gripping the edge of the seat. The first light of morning painted the desert in pale gold and pink, illuminating the distant horizon. Slick took a deep breath, the pulse beneath the ground faint but constant, and started the engine. The truck roared to life, carrying them and the barrels toward the next stage of their journey. The desert stretched endlessly on either side, a living entity, patient, eternal, and hungry. They moved slowly at first, cautious, each jolt of the wheels, each clank of metal magnified in the quiet morning air. The shadow did not attack immediately, but its presence was undeniable. Subtle shifts of sand at the edges of their vision, the faint dark glimmer that seemed to hover just beyond the horizon, reminders that the desert and the well had not forgotten them. Hours passed as they traversed rocky outcrops and scrubland, the freight car rattling behind them. Slick focused on the road, hands white on the wheel, eyes scanning constantly. The desert's pulse beneath them was growing stronger, the hunger of the well reaching upward, probing, patient. Finally, in the mid-afternoon sun, they spotted the abandoned rail line. The tracks were rusted, weeds growing between the ties, but intact enough to carry a load. Slick guided the truck carefully, aligning the freight car with the tracks. Every movement was precise, calculated. One misstep could topple the barrels or leave them vulnerable to the shadow. They worked in tense silence, securing the barrels onto the rail car. Sweat poured from their bodies, mixing with oil and dust, their muscles aching, but they pressed on. The desert's pulse was now unmistakable, a low, insistent vibration that resonated through the metal of the truck and the rails alike. The shadow lurked just beyond sight, patient, eternal, and hungry. By late afternoon, the barrels were stable, ready for transport. Slick climbed back into the pickup, Rafe beside him, hearts pounding with anticipation and fear. They began moving along the tracks, the wheels rattling over the rusted rails, dust rising in ghostly clouds. The desert stretched endlessly around them, a silent predator watching, waiting, calculating. The first miles passed without incident, but the shadow was patient. It did not strike openly, not yet. Its tendrils flickered at the edge of their vision, subtle, almost imperceptible, but unmistakable. The pulse beneath the tracks grew stronger, resonating through their bones. The well's hunger was waking, slow and deliberate, probing, testing. Slick's hands tightened on the wheel, knuckles white. Every jolt, every clank, every subtle vibration reminded him of what was at stake. The barrels represented survival, greed, and danger all at once. The desert had taught him to fear, the well had taught him patience, and the shadow had taught him terror. Hours passed as they moved further east, the sun dipping low, casting long shadows across the desert. Civilization was not far, faint lights glimmering on the horizon, a promise of temporary safety. Slick allowed himself a cautious sense of relief, though he knew better than to trust hope completely. The desert and the well were patient. The shadow it never forgot. By nightfall, they approached a small town, buildings huddled together against the desert, lights flickering faintly in windows. Slick parked near a warehouse, the freight car rattling to a stop. They had made it, at least for now. The barrels were secure, the truck ready, and the desert, momentarily, seemed at bay. But the desert never forgets. The well never forgives. And the shadow waits for the precise moment to strike. Slick leaned against the pickup, muscles trembling, body drenched in sweat and grime. Rafe sat nearby, silent, still tense. They had survived the desert, the shadow, and the well's tests so far. But survival was never permanent. The desert demanded payment, the well demanded tribute, and the shadow was patient. Eternal. Hungry. Slick whispered to himself, a mantra of defiance and determination. I will survive. I will leave this place. I will never dig too deep again. The desert's pulse continued beneath the ground, subtle, insistent, a reminder that the shadow was never far, the well's hunger eternal, and their journey far from over. The small town lay before them like a fragile oasis, its buildings huddled together against the desert's oppressive vastness. Slick Malone slowed the truck to a crawl, the freight car rattling and groaning behind him, its cargo of black barrels precariously stacked. The pulse beneath the ground, faint but insistent, reminded him that the desert was never truly gone, that the well's hunger lingered like a shadow over every mile traveled. Rafe shifted uneasily beside him. We should find a place to hide the barrels, he said, voice low, tense. Somewhere they won't be noticed until we figure out the next step. Slick's eyes scanned the streets ahead. Dilapidated warehouses, abandoned industrial buildings, and crumbling storefronts stretched along the main road. The town had been abandoned long ago by those who could not endure the desert's relentless grip, leaving only the stubborn and the desperate behind. It would do for now. There, he said, pointing toward a low, rusted warehouse near the center of town. We can use that as a temporary storage. We need to move quickly and quietly. They drove the last few hundred feet slowly, careful not to jostle the barrels. Every bump, every creak of the freight car, echoed in the silence of the empty town, magnifying their presence. Slick parked near the warehouse, jumping down to inspect the connection between truck and rail car. Satisfied that it was secure, he motioned for Rafe to follow. Inside the warehouse, the air was thick with dust and the faint smell of decay. Wooden beams groaned overhead, and the floorboards were uneven and covered in sand blown in from the desert. Slick and Rafe began unloading the barrels, stacking them carefully behind crates and machinery, creating a barricade that would obscure their presence from casual observation. Each barrel was heavier than the last, a burden not just of weight but of consequence, the reminder of the desert's relentless hunger. "Careful with that one," Slick warned as Rafe lifted a barrel into place. "One slip and it could crush us, or worse." Rafe nodded, sweat dripping down his brow. "It's already heavy enough to feel like a death sentence." Slick moved to secure the last barrel, feeling the subtle tremor beneath the warehouse floor. The pulse of the desert was faint but unmistakable, a low vibration that resonated through the metal of the barrels, through the wood beneath their feet, through their bones. The well's hunger was patient, eternal, and it was aware. By the time they finished, the sun had dipped low, casting long, distorted shadows through the cracked windows. The desert beyond seemed to press against the town, silent, watchful, waiting. Slick allowed himself a brief moment to rest, leaning against the barrels, muscles trembling from exhaustion and tension. Rafe sat nearby, silent, still alert. "We need to find a way to move the barrels further east," Slick said finally, voice low and deliberate. "The rail line will get us part of the way, but we need a plan for the next stage." Rafe frowned, thinking. "There's a larger town about 50 miles east," he said. "It's still active, with trucks and roads. We could get the barrels on a larger vehicle there, maybe even find a buyer or someone to help transport them further." Slick nodded slowly. "It's risky. The desert doesn't forget, and the well has eyes everywhere. But it's the best option we have. We move at first light." Night fell fully, enveloping the town in darkness. The warehouse was quiet, save for the faint creak of wood and the distant whisper of wind. Slick kept watch, senses alert, aware that the shadow could strike at any moment. The pulse beneath the ground continued, faint but insistent, a reminder that the desert's hunger was eternal. Rafe leaned back against a crate, rubbing his arms against the chill. "Do you ever get used to it?" he asked quietly. "The fear, the waiting, the constant tension?" Slick shook his head. "No," he said. "You learn to live with it, to respect it, to survive despite it. The desert doesn't forgive, and the well it doesn't forget. You stay alert, or it'll claim you. Simple as that." Hours passed slowly, the night stretching endlessly. Every distant sound, every movement of shadows, made their hearts jump. The desert outside was patient, eternal, and hungry. The shadow lingered at the edges of their perception, coiling and waiting, testing, calculating. By early morning, the first light of dawn painted the desert in pale gold and pink. Slick and Rafe climbed into the pickup once more, hearts pounding with anticipation. The barrels were secure, the warehouse momentarily safe, but the desert and the well were patient. The shadow would not wait forever. They moved cautiously through the town, checking the streets and buildings for signs of life or danger. The town seemed abandoned, but Slick knew better. Appearances were deceptive, and the desert had taught him to expect the unexpected. Every step, every turn, every jolt of the truck had to be calculated, deliberate, precise. The journey east began slowly, the pickup pulling the freight car along the cracked and dusty roads. The desert stretched endlessly on either side, shimmering under the morning sun. The pulse beneath the ground grew stronger, almost imperceptible at first, but building, insistent, like the heartbeat of a predator closing in on its prey. Hours passed as they navigated rocky outcrops and scrubland, the freight car rattling behind them. The shadow did not attack immediately, but its presence was undeniable. Subtle, fleeting glimpses at the edges of their vision, the faint dark shimmer that moved with impossible grace, reminders that the desert and the well had not forgotten them. By late afternoon, they spotted the distant outlines of the larger town. Smoke rose from chimneys, faint sounds of machinery drifted through the air, and the promise of civilization, temporary though it might be, glimmered on the horizon. Slick allowed himself a cautious sense of relief, though he knew the desert and the well were patient, and the shadow it never forgot. They drove cautiously into town, scanning the streets for a secure place to offload the barrels. Abandoned warehouses, quiet docks, and empty lots offered possibilities. Slick chose a storage facility on the outskirts, its large doors rusted but intact. They parked the truck and freight car nearby and began unloading, every movement deliberate, every creak of metal or scrape of barrels amplified in the still air. The pulse beneath the ground continued, a low, insistent vibration that reminded them of the desert's omnipresent hunger. Slick worked with precision, securing the barrels behind crates and machinery, creating barriers and camouflage. Rafe assisted, muscles trembling, sweat mixing with oil and dust, their bodies pushed to the limits of endurance. By nightfall, the barrels were secured, the truck parked, and the warehouse quiet once more. Slick leaned against the metal siding, muscles aching, breathing ragged. Rafe sat nearby, silent, still tense, eyes flicking to the shadows that stretched across the lot. "We've made it this far," Slick said finally, voice low, almost a whisper. "But the desert it never forgets. The well it never forgives. And the shadow it waits. Patient, eternal, hungry." Rafe nodded slowly, understanding the weight of their survival. The desert had tested them, the shadow had stalked them, and the well had whispered its hunger beneath their feet. They had survived this stage, but survival was never permanent. The desert demanded payment, and the well always collects eventually. Slick whispered to himself, a mantra of determination and defiance, "I will survive. I will leave this place. I will never dig too deep again." The desert's pulse continued beneath the ground, subtle but insistent, a reminder that the shadow was never far, the well's hunger eternal, and their journey far from over. The warehouse sat in uneasy silence, the black barrels stacked like ominous sentinels against the walls. Slick Malone paced slowly, his boots kicking up dust from the cracked concrete floor. The dim light from the single hanging bulb above cast long, distorted shadows across the room, shadows that seemed to twist and writhe as if alive. Outside, the desert pressed against the town, patient, eternal, hungry. And beneath the earth, the well's pulse throbbed steadily, like a heartbeat from some ancient, malevolent organism. Rafe sat on a crate, shoulders hunched, staring at the barrels. His hands shook slightly, still coated with a mixture of sweat, oil, and desert dust. "Do you ever think it's watching us?" he asked quietly. "I mean really watching?" Slick stopped pacing and looked at him, eyes dark, voice low. "It doesn't watch, Rafe. It feels. It senses. It waits. And when it strikes, it doesn't miss." He turned back toward the stacked barrels, hands resting briefly on the cold metal. "We're lucky it hasn't attacked while we've been here, but luck is fleeting in the desert." Rafe swallowed hard, nodding. He had learned to respect Slick's instincts. The desert, the well, and the shadow had already taken its toll. One misstep, one lapse of attention, could mean their end. The air felt thick with tension, heavy with the promise of violence that could erupt without warning. Hours passed in uneasy silence. Slick checked the barrels repeatedly, running his hands along the metal, listening for any sign of movement beneath the floorboards. The desert pulse was subtle but constant, vibrating faintly through the warehouse, through their bones, through every nerve ending. Every shift of wind, every creak of the aging structure, seemed amplified in the tense stillness. By midnight, the desert outside was alive with whispers of wind, sand, and faint, imperceptible vibrations. Slick sat on a barrel, rubbing his eyes, mind racing through contingency plans. They had survived the chase across the desert, maneuvered the barrels onto the rail line, and brought them safely into town, but the well's hunger was eternal, and the shadow never rested. Rafe's voice broke the silence. "We need to get the barrels out of here," he said, tone urgent. "This town it's too small, too isolated. Someone could stumble across them, or worse the desert could find us again." Slick nodded slowly. "Agreed. We need transport, but it has to be careful. No noise, no attention. Just smooth, calculated movement. We can't afford mistakes, not now." They discussed their options, scanning maps by dim lantern light, calculating distances and timing. The nearest major town was several hours east, accessible by a series of winding roads that cut through the desert. A truck could transport the barrels safely, but it would require precision, timing, and nerves of steel. By the time they finished planning, the first hints of dawn were seeping through the cracked windows, casting pale light across the warehouse floor. Slick's eyes narrowed as he scanned the desert beyond the town. The dunes shimmered faintly in the morning sun, like an endless ocean of gold and shadow. He could feel the pulse beneath the ground, faint but persistent, a reminder that the desert's hunger was patient, eternal, and ever-present. Slick and Rafe loaded the barrels carefully back into the pickup, the tires groaning under the combined weight. Every movement was deliberate, calculated, precise. Sweat poured from their bodies, mixing with dust and oil, but neither complained. The desert had taught them endurance, the well had taught them patience, the shadow had taught them fear. As they set off, the town faded behind them, swallowed by the vast expanse of desert. The freight car rattled behind them, each jolt and clank magnified in the still morning air. The pulse beneath the ground grew slightly stronger, vibrating through the metal, through the truck, through their very bones. The shadow was patient, lurking at the edges of perception, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Hours passed as they traversed winding roads and rocky terrain. The sun climbed higher, casting the desert in harsh light that shimmered off the sand, creating illusions and distortions at every turn. Slick's eyes were constantly scanning, muscles taut, mind calculating every possibility, every threat. Rafe remained silent, tense, gripping the edge of his seat, aware that any distraction could be fatal. By mid-afternoon, they spotted the outskirts of the larger town, a faint haze of activity visible in the distance. Smoke rose from chimneys, and the distant hum of machinery carried across the desert. Civilization was near, offering the promise of temporary safety, but Slick knew better than to trust it completely. The desert was patient, and the shadow was eternal. They navigated the streets cautiously, searching for a secure location to offload the barrels. Abandoned warehouses, quiet industrial lots, and deserted docks offered possibilities. Slick chose a facility near the edge of town, a large warehouse with rusted doors and cracked windows. They parked the truck and freight car, scanning the surroundings for any signs of life or danger. Unloading the barrels was grueling. Each one was heavier than the last, coated with oil, sweat, and dust. The pulse beneath the ground was faint but insistent, vibrating through the floorboards and metal supports. Every sound, the creak of wood, the clank of metal, the distant cry of a bird, made their hearts race. They moved with precision, stacking the barrels behind crates and machinery, creating barriers to obscure their presence. By nightfall, the barrels were secured inside the warehouse, and Slick allowed himself a brief moment of rest. Rafe sat nearby, still tense, eyes scanning the shadows. They had survived so far, but the desert demanded vigilance, the well demanded tribute, and the shadow was patient, eternal, and hungry. Slick stared at the ceiling, muscles trembling, mind racing with the knowledge that survival was temporary. Every choice, every action, every step carried consequences. The desert would not forget, the well would not forgive. And the shadow waited, watching, calculating, planning the perfect moment to strike. Rafe broke the silence again. "Do you ever think it will stop? The chasing, the hunger, the shadow?" he asked quietly. Slick shook his head slowly. "No," he said. "Not until it's satisfied. And it's never satisfied. We survive by moving, by staying ahead, by respecting it. That's all we can do." Hours passed in uneasy silence. The desert outside was alive with whispers of wind and shifting sand, the pulse beneath the ground growing subtly stronger with each passing hour. Slick and Rafe remained alert, muscles coiled, senses sharp. The shadow could strike at any moment, but for now, it waited. Patient, eternal, and hungry. By early morning, the first light of dawn seeped through the warehouse windows, casting long, distorted shadows across the floor. Slick and Rafe prepared once more to move the barrels, hearts pounding with anticipation and fear. The desert was patient, but time was a luxury they could not afford. They loaded the barrels carefully back into the pickup, the vehicle groaning under the combined weight. Each movement was deliberate, precise, and calculated. The freight car rattled behind them as they drove cautiously through the quiet streets, every jolt magnified in the still air. The pulse beneath the ground continued, faint but persistent, a reminder that the desert, the well, and the shadow were never far away. Slick's hands gripped the wheel tightly, eyes scanning constantly for danger. Rafe remained silent, tense, aware that any distraction could mean death. As they left the town behind, the desert stretched endlessly before them, shimmering under the morning sun. The horizon held the promise of safety, but Slick knew better than to trust it. The desert was patient, the well eternal, and the shadow it never forgot. Slick whispered to himself, a mantra of determination and defiance, "I will survive. I will leave this place. I will never dig too deep again." The pulse beneath the ground grew slightly stronger, vibrating through the tires, the metal of the freight car, and their very bones. The desert's hunger was patient, the well eternal, and the shadow waited for the precise moment to strike. The desert stretched endlessly before them, a vast, shimmering expanse of gold and shadow. Slick Malone gripped the steering wheel with white-knuckled determination, eyes scanning the horizon for any sign of danger. The freight car rattled behind the pickup, loaded with the barrels that held their survival and their curse alike. Each jolt of the wheels sent tremors through his body, echoing the subtle, persistent pulse beneath the ground, the ever-present heartbeat of the well, patient, eternal, hungry. Rafe sat beside him, shoulders hunched, eyes darting nervously to the dunes and scrubland that rolled by. "How much further?" he asked, voice tight with tension. Slick didn't answer immediately. There was no comfort to be found in numbers, no reassurance in distance. The desert had taught him that survival was a measure of patience, vigilance, and timing. Finally, he said, 50 miles. Maybe less. But distance doesn't matter. The desert is patient, the well is eternal, and the shadow it never forgets. Rafe swallowed hard, his fingers gripping the edge of the seat. Sweat and dust coated his skin, mixing with the oil from the barrels, a tangible reminder of the long hours and relentless journey. The desert had stripped them of comfort, of fatigue, and of false bravado, leaving only the raw edge of survival. Hours passed with the sun climbing higher, casting the landscape in harsh light. Heat shimmered off the sand, creating illusions and distortions that played tricks on their eyes. Every movement of the freight car, every subtle jolt of the wheels, seemed magnified, echoing through the tires and into their bones. The pulse beneath the ground grew steadily stronger, resonating like the heartbeat of some vast, patient predator. Slick adjusted his grip on the wheel, muscles coiled, mind alert. He knew the desert's lessons well: patience, vigilance, respect. Any misstep, any distraction, and the shadow could claim them. The barrels represented survival, greed, and danger in equal measure, their weight a constant reminder that one wrong move could be fatal. By late afternoon, the outlines of the larger town began to appear in the distance, buildings clustered together like survivors of some long-forgotten battle. Smoke rose faintly from chimneys, and the distant hum of machinery carried across the desert. Civilization promised safety, but Slick knew better than to trust appearances. The desert and the well were patient, and the shadow it never rested. As they approached the outskirts, Slick scanned the streets, searching for a secure place to offload the barrels. Abandoned warehouses, quiet docks, and industrial lots offered potential hiding spots. He chose a large facility near the edge of town, its rusted doors and cracked windows promising temporary concealment. They parked the truck and freight car nearby, scanning for any signs of life or danger. The desert's pulse was faint but constant, vibrating through the ground and their bones. The shadow lurked at the edges of perception, patient, waiting, calculating. Slick knew that the moment of confrontation could come at any time. Unloading the barrels was grueling. Each one was heavier than the last, coated with oil, dust, and sweat. The subtle tremor beneath the floorboards made their movements treacherous. Every sound, the creak of wood, the scrape of metal, even distant echoes, amplified their fear. They worked with precision, stacking the barrels behind crates and machinery, creating barriers and concealment. By nightfall, the barrels were secured inside the warehouse. Slick leaned against the metal siding, muscles aching, breathing ragged. Rafe sat nearby, silent, still tense, eyes flicking to shadows that danced across the lot. They had survived this stage of the journey, but survival was temporary. The desert demanded vigilance, The well demanded tribute, and the shadow waited. Slick stepped inside the warehouse to check the barrels, running his hands along the metal, feeling for subtle vibrations, listening for any sound that might betray movement. The pulse beneath the ground was faint but insistent, a reminder that the desert's hunger was ever present. "We need to move again," Slick said finally, voice low, almost a whisper. "We can't linger. The well is patient."